What's up, everybody? Welcome back to Keith and Mike Watch Deep Space Nine. Today we are talking about episode 10 of the first season entitled, Mike, can you give us the laugh? Well, that was a flawless, the Nagus-laugh. We have so much fun this episode, and I'm excited to talk about it. So that was, we apologize in advance to all of the listeners who complained about me doing the Nagus-laugh last week, but that will not be the last laugh because it's just too much fun. So, lots to talk about this week, lots to get into. But before we start talking about the episode, I have a thank you to put out
I'd love to hear
into
this.
the internet because we've been on the struggle bus a fair amount with me endgaming out for no reason all the time, and we were losing our packets and my internet signal, and turns out, so I call Xfinity. Who I've had a bit of an antagonistic relationship with this whole time.
Fair to say, I think that's fair to say.
But today, they sent out a tech to come and investigate what's going on with this, and our new friend, new subscriber to the show, Star Trek fan Neil, came in and had to pull the wire off of the pole and replace the actual cable between the power line and the house because the old one was old and we were losing signal like crazy. And Neil, like a freaking rock star, climbs up the 7,000 foot ladder, cuts the cable, replaces the cable, and here we are, rock solid, locked and loaded, very excited. So Xfinity, we're not always friends, but you got a kick-ass tech. So Neil, thank you very much. If I don't blip out, it's because of you, bud.
You might not be running a small space station from your living room like Keith and I are.
Mm-hmm.
However, you always should check to make sure you're getting what you pay for. Depending on what you're paying for your internet, because I would say 9 times out of 10, 9.9 times out of 10, you're getting screwed somewhere on the line.
Mm-hmm.
So, get yourself a speed test, run it, and make sure you're getting somewhat close to what you're paying for.
Well, at this particular moment, I am currently getting 118% of what I'm paying for. So
That's what we're talking about.
yeah, that's it. That's the stuff right there that makes this possible. You want to know who else makes this possible?
Ooh, that's a professional segue.
I know. I'm getting so good at this. Only 10,000 hours we've put on this. The people who make this show run, and that is our fine and generous patrons who have joined us at patreon.com/K&M. And what do they find there, Mike?
Well, first of all, they find a little button that lets them give us money. And as much as we joke about it, I will say Keith and I put a lot of time into prepping the episodes, watching the episodes, and making them look quasi-professional. And to offset that time, we both have full-time jobs. And this is a full-time job on top of that, so you can help us produce the show and have yourself be a producer credit. So that's the first thing. Also, you get little bonus addeds. Number one, if you're a fan of Keith and Mike watch Deep Space Nine, well, before Keith and Mike talk about Deep Space Nine, Mike watches Deep Space Nine in real time for the first time, and you can watch along with me. I post that every week for our subscribers at the second tier level. Also, fun behind the scenes stuff for our other podcasts, little AMAs. We do Keith and Mike Watch. We have a TNG episode we did last month. This month, we're about to record something new this month. And sometimes you get free episodes early of various shows. We did an interview with a custom action figure creator, Chris from CRM Productions. That's on the feed right now. It's going live on YouTube this Saturday, but you can check it out early if you're a patron. Keith, how in the world could we do the show without our illustrious patrons who we will now enumerate?
Indeed, we will, as soon as you put it up. Yes, we would like to thank Brian Kaufman, Casey Clark, Cloud Lover 69, Jorge Navoa, Alan Zimmerman, and last name to be determined if she would like to have her last name on the internet. We'll find out. And, of course, our newest friend at CRM Productions. You can join them at patreon.com/K&M. All right, what do you say we talk about the Nagus? I'm super excited to talk about this episode. Lots of fun stuff to dig into, and and we'll talk about it later. But one of my favorite things about this episode is we start laying lore. We're planting seeds that will come to fruition seasons and seasons into the future.
Oh, cool.
We plant a seed in this episode that gets played out in the series finale.
Whoa!
So it's crazy.
All right.
There's like a lot of stuff here. If you're paying attention, it's a really fun episode.
Keith, maybe you're about to talk about it in the trivia section, but I'm curious as to whether how earlier in the series, I think was the first or second episode, they aired them out of order.
Mm-hmm.
Was that the case here? Because I found it interesting that they back-to-back episodes that featured Quark and Jake.
Yeah, I don't know if this was aired out of order. I did not see that in any of my research. But yeah, it is interesting that they did do back-to-back Jake and Quark episodes.
This one I found more effective. Spoiler alert.
Profoundly so. Absolutely. But yeah, I'll talk about it more as it's happening, but what I like about this episode is I get the sensation of traction. Mm-hmm. Narratively and character-wise that we haven't had the last two episodes. So anyway, let's not review the episode before we re-review the episode, because we have to talk about when this episode aired. And that, of course, was Sunday, March 21st, 1993. We were throwing on our Walkmans, throwing on the headphones, and listening to Mike's amazing performance. He's not having a stroke. Do not call an ambulance. Mike, let's hear a little of Informer by Snow.
Informer, I don't know the words, didn't know them then, I don't know them now, but I like your boom boom geef.
Wow. Yeah, so that's going to be the number one song for a while now, and just like I Will Always Love You, I need somebody to make a supercut of all of Mike's performances all together so we can all dance and have a great time.
I imagine in 93, ya boom boom was the same thing ya boom boom means now, no?
I would feel like the inference, whatever the subtext is on a boom boom, it feels similar to a milkshake or or some other, what I mean.
I mean, at least all he's saying is that he enjoys your boom boom. It doesn't seem like it's sexualizing it in any sort of way. It's a nice compliment. He enjoys your boom boom.
Boom boom feels inherently sexual to me, unless just like I made a boom boom and that's different. All right, we're off the rails.
Yes.
The top movie was Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 3. 2 was Secret of the Ooze. Mike, what was the third one?
Oh, I mean, it's one of my favorite in the entire Turtles oeuvre. I would say that this was the one where they traveled but back in time.
Yes, indeed.
Keith, I mean, some may assume that I screwed up and we had to record this episode like 3 times, and so I already you've Googled that for me. But some might think that I just had that knowledge in my old little boom boom. I pulled it out my boom boom now.
I want to go back in time and not do the show. All right, so the New York Times headline talked about Yeltsin claims emergency powers, calls April 25th referendum. Interesting. The intrigue happening in Russia at that point. This was not at the end of Yeltsin's regime. He was in a battle for power, and they almost had a civil war, and yet he won and retained power for another 7 years before, Putin took over, and it all went great.
Yeah.
Anyway, so now let's talk about this episode proper. The Nagus was directed by David Livingston, veteran director of various Star Trek properties. He did 2 episodes of Next Generation, 17 of Deep Space Nine, 28 episodes of Voyager, and 15 episodes of Enterprise. So very experienced, deep into the Star Trek lore. And this show also has a story by David Livingston. This is his only Star Trek credit as a writer, but he did contribute the story to this, along with Michael Piller. And it has a teleplay by Ira Stephen Bear, who would go on to become the showrunner and is such a big part of the Deep Space Nine legacy. And I can already sort of see, those seeds I've talked about being planted throughout this episode. I don't know this in any way certain, but if I were a betting man, I would say that was Ira Stephen Bear just dropping little seeds into the dialogue here, there, and everywhere. So I think that's why it starts to feel like, oh, this is the more fully formed, coagulated Deep Space Nine. So that's exciting. Mike, you want to know is what's exciting, but also a little trivial?
Yeah,
That's your.
But there's only one place one could find that information, Keith, and it's this place.
Yeah, that wasn't. Now, Keith, waste your time with trivial trivia. Okay, so I have 5 pieces of trivial trivia today.
Ooh, okay, bringing it.
First off,
Keith usually has 5 pieces of trivia, but we lose them in the packets. So you only get
sometimes.
2 or 3.
You only get like 3.5. Yeah. So in this episode, there is a scene of Morn laughing. And that is the only sound he will make in 93 appearances on the show.
Interesting.
And it is indeed Mark Allen Shepard's voice, who is the person playing Morn, who is almost never credited in the episode because he doesn't speak and therefore technically is an extra, despite the fact that it's a major character in the show.
I think he also has one of the most superfluous scenes in this whole episode, but we'll get there too.
It's a setup. We find this a lot, right? We have to start the story in a slice of life, and then it's interrupted by the action that begins.
No, I don't even mean that. I mean later in the episode when they're about to do the meeting. We'll get to it, obviously. But he's like, no, we're closed for business, and he's just standing there outside the window going like,
because it's funny. It's a joke. He's Norm.
Oh yeah, Norm, you're locked out.
He's Norm.
All right.
That's what it is.
Okay.
All right. So the next piece of trivia is the Ferengi face on the Grand Nagus' staff, which we see right here next to us. Let me point in the right direction. Is designed to resemble Quark. So not just a generic Ferengi, but specifically vaguely Quarkish. In the next piece of trivia, the screen behind O'Brien in the school scene that we're going to see behind him while he's with Jake and Nog in the school scene, on there's a bunch of graphics and whatever, but it includes the puppet aliens from Cat's Paw from the original series, as well as Tribbles. So if you freeze it and take a look at the screen, we've got some references to the original series. The next piece of trivia, this is the first appearance, actually talking about getting traction and starting to feel like we're in the real Deep Space Nine. This is the first appearance of the final version of Odo's face.
And they got a good close-up of it, too.
So they were continuing to fine-tune Odo's makeup throughout the first 9 episodes. But now we're finally in the fully formed Odo face, and it was the makeup was a little thinner before, and you could see a little bit more of Renee's face, and this is sort of the flatter final version of Odo's face. So here we are, just sort of finally settling in. And the last piece of trivia, Max Grodenchik, who plays Rom, is brutally murdered by Tiny Tom, who plays Mayhardu in the movie The Rocketeer. So there it is. If you watch The Rocketeer, you're going to see Rom get murdered by Mayhardu. So that's something. So the guest stars this week
Major.
include Lee Ehrenberg as Grall, Lou Wagner as Krax, Tiny Ron as Mayhardu. Tiny Ron, of course, is a legit 7-footer. He was legitimately 7 feet tall. And, of course, the legendary, inconceivably famous Wallace Shawn as Zek. So very, he's under so much makeup, and you still know exactly who it is. It's Wallace Shawn playing Zek.
I have a story about him.
Ooh, do tell.
So, Keith and I both lived in New York City for many years, and you run into a lot of famous people doing random things, which is totally like, cool. But it's not like you rarely geek out is what I'm getting at. However, I saw him at Ripley Gere Studios, I guess rehearsing for something, and so I didn't geek out too hard, but I was interested because he's like a legend, as you said. So then I guess I had an audition or a rehearsal or something, and about 45 minutes later, I went to Chipotle. And in Chipotle, I see him once again. But what caught me at Chipotle, which was surprising to me, was that he was wearing a jacket. And I thought to myself, well, that's weird because it was the middle of June, Keith. It was incredibly hot. And I thought, oh, maybe he's just running in there. Maybe he's whatever he's rehearsing, he's in costume or something, blah, blah, blah. Well, Keith, later that day, I go to the post office. And I see him once again, 3 times in a day, at the post office, wearing a giant friggin' parka in the middle of June. No face covering. No, it's not like I'm incognito. We're in New York. People do their people things. But so anyway, long story short, I'm a couple people behind him at the post office, and he gets up to the window, and he talks. Surprisingly, shocker, his voice is his voice, but it's not like it's not a character voice. It's just his voice. I just always assume it's a character voice. And so he's mailing a letter, and he sounds like this while he's mailing a letter. And Keith, I just geeked out. I started giggling. I couldn't contain myself. How cool I thought it was that inconceivably he was at the post office doing the voice. And this episode, same thing. The second the Nagus started talking, I started giggling because I'm like, that's a dude. That's a dude.
Of course, it's Wallace Shawn, legendary actor and writer. Wallace Shawn.
And then when they do the laugh when he's in the holodeck, clearly doing whatever you're doing in the holodeck.
Yeah, you know what he's doing.
You do 5 times, 5 different programs.
Yeah. Well, wouldn't you? All right. Well, I think that is, if that's not our cue to transition into the theater, I don't know what is. Mike, don't forget we have a beautiful new transition. Yeah. Sounds great. If that doesn't get you fired up to get into the episode, I don't know what will.
All right, let's do it.
All right. Okay, so here we are in the Nagus. In the teaser, we begin with a shifty-looking Ferengi walking a giant, and who we will discover later to be the Nagus onto the station. There's no dialogue. We just see them walking in all shifty-like. And meanwhile, Jake is wrestling. Oh, hold on. All right, I'm doing the screenshots. I forgot. Meanwhile, Jake is wrestling with pads before school. Cisco enters and tells Jake that he wants to take them to Bajor to the Gratitude Festival and see the fire caverns. Both of those words will be important later. And he's tossing off exposition that will eventually be 2 large pieces of Deep Space Nine lore. I wrote the same thing, then I said it before in a different way, just not quite as good. Jake does not want to go because he has got plans with Nog. And he's getting too old to hang out with his dad. And of course, every time I see a pad and it's like a stack of pads, because you see it so often on Star Trek, like, oh, I'm so busy, I've got all these stack of pads, because they were able to conceive of iPads, but they couldn't conceive that you could store more than one file on each iPad. So you need a separate iPad for each homework assignment for each book. Anyway, it's a gag.
We also learn, I think it's important to point out, we also learned Jake really likes OJ.
I think he had lemonade before last week.
He drinks OJ like 3 times this week.
Yeah, I don't know, maybe it's a citrus deficiency, needs some vitamin C. Yeah. So it's always lemonade, OJ. I don't know. We'll see. So anyway, I thought it was a nice little father son thing, very realistic. Like, oh, let's go, like you're so used to taking your kid and doing all these fun things, and there's always that moment somewhere along the line they'll be like, pass.
I know. That's happening with my nieces now. We had a birthday party for my niece this past weekend, and they just wanted to hang out with their friends.
Yeah, well, understandable. So, as we get the OJ.
Go back.
There's the OJ. There's your OJ. I don't know. All right, we're gonna have to start keeping track of every time. New segment. What's Jake drinking?
Because apparently Jake drinking.
Every episode he's got a drink. What do you think it is? It's OJ. It's lemonade. It could be great. What's Jake drinking? Okay, great. So
I hurt my neck, but yeah. Oh, so before I'm gonna maybe I'll look it up. Do you have the IMDb pulled up by any chance?
Yeah, I should.
I think it's important we highlight the makeup artist on this episode because we get to see so many specific close-ups of the Ferengi face, and there's some just incredible makeup work. And then, of course, we see Odo's sort of developing design. So maybe we should highlight that.
Yes, that's a very good thing to do. Yeah, and especially because they had to create like 25 different Ferengi. So let's take a look. Then makeup department. All right, the prosthetic makeup artist was Michael Mills. And other makeup artists includes Jenna Phillips, Craig Reardon, Jill Rockow, and the makeup designer and supervisor, of course, the legendary Michael Westmore.
Incredible work this week. Incredible work.
Yeah. So good idea. I'm glad we're calling out these folks. All right. So at Quarks, we're gonna find Rom characterized as we're going to know and love him finally. Begins getting dressed down from Quark for being honest. So I think I mentioned it before. The last couple of times we saw Rom, it didn't feel like Rom because they hadn't dialed in what the character's mannerisms were going to be, and so this is finally who the character is. Because in the pilot, he's like ruff, 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 like this gruff guy, and then he was sort of halfway in between when we first put Nog in school. But this is where Max is finally like, all right, this is sort of who the character is. And we're going to see a lot more of Rom and watch that develop. And there's some interesting plot character beats for him in this episode. But I'm not going to talk about too much because I don't want to spoil anything for my co-host.
Well, and we get a little bit of, I got a little more insight into the Ferengi ethics, as we'll talk about shortly. And that as much as I thought it was transactional, there is more of a finder's keeper vibe too. Like in this scene here, we catch that a client of the bar, of the casino, lost their purse. And I guess there's no lost and found at Quark's because once found by Quark, it lost. So we learned that.
It's almost like it's guided by a set of rules, perhaps the rules of acquisition. Getting its first we got some of the rules earlier, but it was never named the rules of acquisition. So again, planting a seed that's going to carry through for the rest of the series, introduced in this episode. Pretty cool. So yes, I wrote down literally here, crazy how much running Deep Space Nine stuff is established in this episode. Ira Stephen Bear, I believe, had to be a part of it. And then Rom immediately goes and takes his stress out on his son Nog. Not cool, buddy.
Yeah, Nog has a great arc in this episode.
Nog has a fantastic arc in this episode. And we see the consequences of him making, Nog clean the thing he passed on the job. Anyway, not Rom's greatest parenting moment in this. So we continue forward, and here's where we have Morn doing his laugh, and I feel like in Armin's reaction to how long it took Morn to get the joke, I feel like that was an ad lib. There was something about like that took you a while that felt like Armin Shimmerman in the moment, as opposed to I feel like he actually like soft broke in that, and they kept it in, which I think is cool. Anyway, so all of a sudden, boom, we meet the Grand Nagus' son Krax, who says the Nagus wants to get it on in Quark's holosuite. And so we meet the Nagus for the first time, and immediately he just wants to get into it up on the holosuite. Because why not? And we hear, as we fade out of the teaser, we hear the Nagus' laugh for the first time, although it was very clearly ADR'd. Mike, can you do an ADR'd Nagus laugh for us?
I bust out laughing during it.
That sounds more like the noise he was making in the holosuite.
Well, I thought they were the same, to be honest, to be frank.
Probably. No, it's definitely like, wow, we're going to go big.
I guarantee you, that was an actual legit artistic conversation that was had, because I'm sure that our pal at the post office I guess he saw his kind of design and was like, I got to make some bold character choices. And they had to be like, okay, is this too silly? Like, where do we want with this to live? And they were like, nah, let's go with it.
Well, I mean, if you're going to cast Wallace Shawn, you're going to get Wallace Shawn.
Yeah.
And the Ferengi have always been these comedic characters anyway. So if you're going to, put in the Ferengi king or president, like, go big or go home, right?
Right. Yeah.
So there it is. So we begin Act 1 in the schoolhouse. And O'Brien is the substitute teacher for Keiko. And there are way more kids in the classroom than when we first met them. And the set is way more established, which is cool. And we see O'Brien battling, trying to be a teacher. And turns out Nog didn't do his homework. And he lies and says the Vulcans stole it. It's a funny gag on ethics, and he forces Jake to back him up in an obvious lie, because it works, because O'Brien's a total pushover. But if you're paying attention from the teaser, the reason he wasn't able to do his homework was because Rom forced him to work all night, as opposed to have an opportunity to do his homework. And anyway, so...
Well, it's like, I think it's more than just like a joke on ethics. I actually think it's so multi-layered that I really enjoyed it, because you've got 3 delicious little layers, right? You got layer 1, where Rom is looking to Jake to like be a good buddy, and so we have this sort of analyzing whether what's the right ethical thing to do. Do you help your buddy out in this scenario, or do you tell the truth?
Yeah.
On top of that, they're comparing the ethics of Vulcans, who I don't know. I'm not a Star Trek wizard by any stretch, but I know that Vulcans have pretty specifically black and white,
famously ethical.
So that's kind of a funny joke. And then on top of that, we also see, the first bit of broad brushing of Nog this episode, where it looks like he's being bad, and all these judgments and assessments are made about him. But the truth is that he's just, and this actually is a deep cut for the educational system and kids in general. The bad kids aren't always bad. They might just have some shit going on at home, which is what we see is the layer here. So I actually thought it was a pretty effective scene for as short as it was.
Yeah. Well, and there's also O'Brien's ethics. O'Brien knows they're lying.
Yeah.
And how is he going to handle it? And then we see him sort of not embarrass Nog in front of the students was a positive ethical thing. And then later we're going to see
him rat
a scene where he throws Nog onto the bus for Cisco, which it wasn't as ethical. So it's complicated. It's interesting. I like it though. I really like, it feels like such a low stakes story, but I think it was very important for the characters. And I
also,
like it. I like it a lot.
Can we get O'Brien some help? I mean, the guy is substitute teaching. He's always sending off crews, but his ass is working constantly. Everything's broken. He's always coming out of a hole, fixing a pipe, doing something. Like, give him an assistant.
they don't have a standby teacher, because it was like, all right, so Jen's doing fiddler, right, and she's out, and you have to go in for her.
Yeah, I gotta wait some tables, and that's not happening.
No. I'm sure there has to be some other teacher. He's not obligated because your wife's a teacher. Anyway,
We don't got virtual. We're in space, man. We don't got a program that can run.
No holodeck teachers.
Come on.
Totally. Yeah. All right. Well, whatever.
Wormhole in the plot.
Yes, but it's a fun gag. Keep your characters in the story. So back at Quark's, the Nagus has been doing the deed in the holosuite for hours.
Oh, he's thirsty. He needs those electrolytes, yo.
Quark thinks that the Nagus is going to take his bar. And he returns and is very thirsty. A lot of this went over my head as a kid, but now thinking about it today, I'm like, oh, ooh, yeah, that's just like right there. That's
interesting.
just
He doesn't have. He's so thirsty coming out there. Wormholing as we go, but he doesn't have this drink poison checked like he does later.
That's true. Although we don't know where that came from.
Yeah. Well,
we know where it's grab it off of a table. We know where it's going. We know what it's replenishing. Gross.
It's very funny. It's overt, but it's subtle, and I guess it's not subtle in any way, shape, or form. But it did it on purpose because it went over your head as a kid.
It went over my head, when I was a kid, and now as an adult, I'm like, oh, now I get it. Oh, what's going on in those holosuites? And at least it's Deep Space Nine has a level of honesty that Next Gen never did about like what goes on in the holosuites. They're like, we're not going to pretend like we don't all know what program 1 through 99 out of 100 are. Mm-hmm. And,
I want to face off against a Sherlock Holmesian villain. Oh, you do? Because I think he just wants to, knock it out.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I think,
do some of this.
Deep Space Nine are like, yeah, we'll do Sherlock after we do Sherlock. Yeah. Okay, so... Anyway,
Keith and I are going to make no more sex jokes the rest of the show.
That seems very unlikely. So Quark offers Rom's quarters for the Nagus to sleep it off. And back at Ops, we have the scene here where O'Brien rats out Jake and Nog. And to Sisko's credit, Sisko's like, you know what? No, that's not cool. Like...
Well, he says that to him, but then he's about to go rip some shit.
Well, he's going to, but he was also like, look, I can't tell my son who to be friends with. Like, that's not ethical, but also it would a million times backfire. But
it does show, actually, now that I think about it, I'm going to preempt myself. It does show an interesting reverse arc for Ben here, because he starts out with that premise, right? And then... Mm-hmm. He's guided in some ways by O'Brien. Even Dax gives him some advice about how he should parent. And in the end, he kind of comes to learn that, like, you know what? I trusted my son, and I'm glad I did. So anyway, we'll get there.
Yeah, we find out that Sisko's first instinct was right here, and everyone else's was wrong, and it's cool.
Give your kid OJ. OJ's all you need.
Just all OJ, just not the same OJ that the Nagus was drinking. Mm-hmm. So at Quark's, we see exactly what you just said. Mayherdu tests the chilled tube grubs, and the Nagus likes them. The Ferengi cuisine leaves a little to be desired, but it's great for TV. The Nagus compliments Quark on his screwing people over in business. So, obviously, Quark's reputation has preceded them. Then the Nagus finds out that Nog is in school and is appalled, and Rom forbids Nog from doing his homework. It's again like the Ferengi's whole economic system, their cultural system, their educational system is really really screwed up. It's hard to imagine how they were able to get warp drive. But they do anyway.
Yeah, it's in that scene. It's even harder to kind of discern which he's just more disgusted by, that he's in school or that there's a human teacher, right? So there's that double.
And a female teacher.
Yeah.
So yeah, though there's a lot there. And we can see Rom here eating a beetle. So I don't think we've introduced beetle snuff yet, but we'll get there. And again, look at that
look
just
at
the
it. Yeah.
makeup effects. Like that is so much going on there, and the details of the ear hair. It's
And
really
how
quite
delicate
something.
the eye area is too. Like, so we can still get this sort of, acting's in the eyes, they say, and so we can still get
Yeah.
that, and yet have him have all this shit going on.
And honestly, it is standard definition. It's not high def, but you can see here in this picture blown up the how smooth the transitions are from the appliances to the actual skin, because it's cut right here below the lip and around the eye. You can't really tell where the appliance ends and the skin starts, and that's just really good makeup work. So yeah, good job. So we find out that the Nagus wants to hold a meeting at Quark's about setting up trade to the Gamma Quadrant, which makes sense, and Quark is very relieved not to have the Nagus take his bar, which he was afraid of. So as Act 2 begins, the station is swarmed with Ferengis, and Cisco tells Odo to keep an eye on them, which there's a lot of sort of like prejudice here, just assuming the Ferengis are up to no good, but also they're up to no good. So
Yeah, generally, he does not have a good track record thus far.
No, he does not. The table is all set up, and the meeting begins.
They kick out my boy.
They kick out Morn. It's like it's Norm. He lives at the bar. It's a funny gag. I don't know why he didn't think that was funny. I liked it. Morn is always welcome for me. So on the promenade, Jake discovers a despondent Nog who's been banned from school. Nog is embarrassed and disappointed. Then they fight. I thought this was a very realistic scene.
Yeah, especially if kids that age, because your kids, oh, you're mad at me? I'm mad at you. Well, why are you mad at me? I'm mad at you. Like, there's not a lot of emotional acuity to really kind of like discern what your feelings are. So it's just we're fighting.
Well, and he's and you can see Nog transitioning his embarrassment and his shame about his situation into conflict, and I just thought it was very realistic. The emotional beats here in this relationship, in this story, are really well articulated, and
the other thing that I think feels really true to life, and it is, I've observed a lot in my friends who are parents and my siblings who are parents. I always like to. I'm not a parent, so I reserve judgment, but I've made the observations, and it is striking to me how parents' opinions about who you should be friends with or what they think of various people do trickle down and influence their child's behavior, and it's visible in this episode.
Well, and it can be very damaging, because if you establish the idea that I'm judging you based on your friends and your friends' behaviors, that has some consequences down the road, and it can mess you up. So anyway, good scene. I really like it. So at the Nagus' meeting, they're doing business, and it turns out it's we have lots of shots of that scene. It turns out it's getting harder to do business because the Ferengi's reputation in the galaxy is roughly that of the Trump Organization, but nobody in the Gamma Quadrant knows they're all crooks, which is an interesting and realistic thing, because if the Ferengis have been out screwing the entire galaxy for generations, a wormhole to another galaxy, they don't know what they're up to. That makes perfect sense. But then
It would have been a good time for Quark to maybe be like, well, let's be careful because, there are some like Gambaholic races who will screw us over, like the AlamarEmmys. But I guess he decided to just like, you don't bring that up to the Godfather until it's necessary.
I think they were trying to make, Quark was trying to make that episode non-canon. So that was the...
Am I to understand, though? So, yeah, like, they don't really break down the hierarchy of who the Nagus is, but I guess he's like a Godfather / president type figure.
Yeah, he is the leader of the Ferengi commerce. It's sort of like somewhere between the president and the king. Mm-hmm. That sort of a deal. So
but like also like a gangster leader.
Well, it's Ferengi, so they're all gangsters.
Yeah, that's
true.
True.
It's all about acquisition screwing people. Just imagine he's Trump. He's basically Trump. Shots fired. Whoo, come at us. All right.
Look at those subs go down.
I doubt it. Anyway, so surprise, the Nagus announces that he's abdicating the throne, and the successor is Quark. The Ferengis are pissed, but of course, Quark's super into it. So that is how we end Act 2.
We have a good series of screenshots coming up. They're like, we need to give each of these extras a line and a close-up. So Quark's wondering.
You did all of that makeup work, and you hired these great actors to play the little Ferengis. So there it is. There it is.
Yeah,
it's like, all right, yeah, I'm into that. Love it, and certainly it was very like, oh my God, they're making him king. It's only episode 10. That's crazy. Cut to. So at the beginning of Act 3, it's the Cisco's quarters. Jake is sad. He tells his dad about Nog's problems and announces that Nog can't even read. And of course, that makes Cisco start to wonder about lots of things. But we're not going to get into it yet, because on the promenade, a Ferengi pirate named Grawl gets Quark to pay him for protection from envious Ferengis. And I say pirate because the actor who plays Grawl is in the Pirates of the Caribbean series, Lee Ehrenberg. So it begins, obviously, a terrified Quark goes to the former Nagus, who
before you get there, let me give you Mike, the play-by-play of Mike. So Mike thinks he's so smart and predicts the whole episode is going to be about Quark coming to realize that he doesn't want the throne. He doesn't want the power because everybody's coming for him, and it's going to be cutthroat, and it's going to be scary and dangerous. Really, really had a shit-eating grin. I was like, I got it. Nailed it.
I got it. We're doing like a Shakespeare.
Instantly wrong, but,
Well, that's the fun part. All right, so the Quark goes to the former Nagus, who we learn is named Zek. Good, just lock that away. His name is Zek. And he gives him advice to be ruthless. Then he abruptly dies. Boom. So Zek is dead. Long live Zek. So they do a funeral, and they
is there a Zek action figure, Keith?
Hell yeah, there's a Zek action figure.
Okay,
cool. Don't worry, we're gonna do it. In fact, I just acquired it.
Yeah, Ferengi Parade.
Oh, that's a good idea. Ferengi Parade. Anyway, so in this we learn that the Ferengis have the tradition of selling off pieces of the body,
which I thought was great. What a great part! Great touch.
Great, yeah, oh, absolutely. Like and so the body's gone, and you're selling these little discs. It's pretty funny. And Quark enlists none other than Rom to be his bodyguard. Rom tells Quark he hopes to take over the bar. This causes Quark to do a brilliant spit take.
Which I couldn't catch it, but.
If you listen with cans on, he also peaks all of the microphones laughing. Mm-hmm. And they didn't bother to go back and ADR it. So all of the microphones when he was laughing peak. So Odo comes up to investigate the death, of course, but the body has already been vacuum desiccated. So so what did you think of a Ferengi funeral?
That was great. I thought it was exactly what it should be. It did raise this question though when Odo pops up, because clearly Odo, I feel like 80% of Odo's day, and head chief security officer on a huge space station is a pretty epic task. But I feel like 80% of his day is like making sure that Quark isn't up to any funny business. And it brings up the big question that you and I have said so many times. Either get a camera up in that bitch or have the computer just constantly in surveillance. Like, I feel like Odo doesn't need personal touch so much. But I guess we need the TV.
Because, I mean, A, they're in love.
Yes,
but
also
B, but B, I believe that the Federation rules of privacy would prohibit him from doing that.
But he can glue himself into an object and spy? That's cool?
I don't think that's cool by the Federation rules, but it's harder to stop him doing it. That would be my guess. Also we need to see him in the spar, but you can see Odo's final makeup there, where it's a little bit flatter than you've been seeing thus far.
But Renee, that posture, that's just terrible. Look at that posture.
He's leaning in. He's freaking out. Actually, Armin Shimmerman's face there is hilarious as well.
Yo, Armin Shimmerman gives, in all of the episodes, this is the best face. He gives so much face that it is a masterclass in not scene chewing, but just face doing.
Under all of that makeup, he's so talented. And there is Odo playing with the vacuum desiccated stuff. So on the promenade, Jake and Nog patch it up, and Jake has an idea. I like the idea. I love that they establish that Jake and Rom hang out here on the promenade on the second level, because that's exactly what they would do. Because they're basically in a shopping mall, right? So
yeah, it's what you do at the mall. You go up the escalator and you watch all the people walk by.
Yeah, and that's and they're looking for cute Bajoran girls and toys and whatever comes through. Like this representation of 14-year-old Jake and Nog, they got right, because sometimes I think earlier in the series they played Jake as much younger than he is, and so they sort of play him like he's 10 when he's not. He's 14, and the difference between a 10-year-old and a 14-year-old is huge. And I think that this actually felt much more appropriate to his age, and actually last episode too. They got that right.
And not just that, not just the representation. It should be pointed out, the performances as well are very grounded and realistic. But I mean, that comes with the territory. The best way to get kids to give a good performance is to write kids naturally.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, and that's a really good way to put it, because it feels like he's just an extension of probably what's going on in his real life at that point. Anyway, there's Quark is bothering Odo, and then look out, he survives an assassination attempt. So they have a sort of the hunter-killer drone come in and try to zap him, and but he survives. So, all right. So Mike, having, I'm sure, figured out everything at this point, who did you think tried to assassinate Quark then?
Well, they had set it up, and I guess I went with the most obvious choice, it being the son, right? The guy. It was at least masterminded by the original Nagus' son. That was my.
Yeah.
I didn't even sniff the resolution, even though I should have, but I didn't. I was kind of just going with it beat by beat.
It's all very Shakespearean. So as Act 4 begins, O'Brien explains to Sisko and Odo that it was a Ferengi tracking bomb. So that's cool. It's like oh god, why can't I come up with
Well, Keith, I thought you blipped right there, but that was just you thinking.
That was my brain blipping.
I have a trigger warning for blips now.
All of my my bandwidth is great, technology wise, but just brain. It reminds me of the hunter killer things from Dune. So they try to get Quark to tell them who done it, and there are several suspects, but they can't pin it down. But they realize that Mayhardu was the only one not at Zek's funeral, and his species are famously loyal. So back at their quarters, Sisko grills Jake on what he's been doing with Nog, and Jake says it's private, and Sisko is pissed. So we are sort of escalating that conflict between father and son there. I'm behind on the screenshots. Oh man.
Give it a good go. You gave it a good go, buddy.
I did really well for a while. So meanwhile, Quark is enjoying grilling and negotiating other Ferengi while petting a puppet. So he's making deals. Oh, there's orange juice, more orange juice.
OJ.
So that's the scene where Jake will not say what's going on with Nog, which I think is cool. So here's.
And do you think the choice
Quark.
there? Now, this isn't important. Let's discuss it at the moment. Do you think
Yeah.
that choice on Jake's part is to protect Nog from his parents, or because Nog said don't say anything? And
I'm sure it's because Nog said don't say anything.
yeah.
Like I'm sure because like he's probably, I mean, we're obviously seeing that Nog is feeling shame and embarrassment about the whole situation. Right? He's ashamed with the Ferengis because he wants to go to school and they don't want him to go to school. He's ashamed of the people at school because he hasn't had the education and opportunities and time. So Nog's in a tough spot here. And I totally understand why he wouldn't want people to know that he can't read and such. So yeah, I think again, it all makes sense to me. And Jake's not giving him up, even though it makes Jake look good.
Yeah.
It's a good beat. Good beat. So what did you think of Quark's puppet here?
Oh, awesome. This whole scene is such a Godfatherian scene.
Fatherarian.
Yeah, and it's such sort of like a pistache, like comical moment, but played straight, and all the different the just brilliant design of the Ferengi. I really enjoyed this scene quite a bit, and just like Armin Shimmerman too, like not overly chewing the scenery, like recognizing that sort of the imagery and the costuming was doing a lot of the heavy lifting for him, so he didn't overplay any of it. It was just so tastefully done that it was funny, but also a good scene. It was great, and the lighting is phenomenal in this
Good
scene.
lighting.
Yeah.
David Livingston did a good job on the direction of all of that.
It was interesting because last week was such an example of like how to do camp wrong, and this week did camp right in so many ways. So
Yeah, no, totally. And it's like this is a full comedy episode, right? And we'll talk about it at the end. But if you had, before I saw what they could do with the Ferengi and their culture, and like if you pitched me a Ferengi comedy episode, I'd be like, no, that sounds terrible. Why would I want to watch a Ferengi comedy episode? But then you execute it, and you're like, no, that's super fun. That's delightful. So at the end of this scene, Quark exits, and we find out it was Rom and Krax who tried to kill Quark. So you were half right. It was half the sun and Rom, which is crazy when you think about it in the long run. But anyway, that's what happened.
In the short term, though, like I thought that they earned it very well with how shitty Quark treats Rom.
No, for sure. Right from the very beginning, and also Rom's ambition to run the bar.
Yeah.
And how, like, if Quark is the king, at least he can do is let him run the bar. But no, so there it is.
Hey, have you ever wondered, Keith, before you move on, how Avery Brooks could over-indicate with a baseball metaphor? Well,
what props?
You about
Always
to get
props.
that. You about to get that.
Yes. So Dax visits Cisco to give him some parenting advice. Jake has blown off dinner again. And we learn in this that Dax has been a mother 3 times and a father twice. And she advises that Cisco go find Jake and bring him back to dinner. And then sits there and steals the aubergine stew.
Yes.
Which I don't think we're gonna hear more.
And if you were asking yourself this whole scene like I was, is he gonna put that baseball into the empty soup bowl? The answer is yes.
He sure is.
He sure is.
He sure is. And I don't know. It's pre-COVID, right? They solved COVID, so you could just put things in a soup. It's fine. So when Cisco does find Jake, he finds that instead of screwing around, Jake is teaching Nog how to read. Which is I found this very heartwarming.
Me too. Really touching. Really touching.
It's a very it's a touching moment. It's a very human, even though it's a human and a Ferengi moment. And I thought it was a really great moment for Jake, for Nog, for Cisco, and for the show. Frankly, it has a very compassionate heart.
There's a lot of examples here, but I'm sorry. I'm gonna throughout this episode I'm gonna give an over analogy because it's not as like overt in the episode, but it struck me. My father, loved my father. He he wasn't a day-to-day participant in a lot of my life. So a lot of the like sort of fundamental life skills you learn, I didn't get from my dad. But my brother was there for me. And I'll never forget, man, I could not freaking ride a bike. No matter what I tried, all my friends were zipping around. I could not get off training wheels. Could not do it, Keith. And then one day, my brother, God bless him, was like, F it. You're going to ride a goddamn bike. And he took those training wheels off, and we spent the day in the driveway falling down. And then the one time he let go. And we all have that example of one life skill that you remember.
Yeah.
And I remember, same thing, my next door neighbor, Trisha, for some reason, couldn't tie her shoes. And I happened to be the one summer that like was able to give her the whatever the pneumatic device was or the whatever. And to this day, she remembers every time I see her, it's like, oh, you helped me learn to tie my shoes. And there's a million examples of that in running a camp, but those are the things that stick with you. So like, you know, the person who taught you to read is a huge thing. And I thought that this little moment, for some reason, really filled me with that, like how important this was and how cool Jake is for it.
Yeah. You know, it's funny. We're digressing apparently, but it's our show. We can digress if we want. I've been thinking lately about gratitude for information, right? Because this, you know, you grow up with a kid, they're trying to like give you information all the time, and like, yeah, screw you, I don't want to know how to do algebra or whatever. But as an adult today, when somebody gives me a piece of information that I don't know and can use, I'm so grateful. I really appreciate it, you know, and so that people giving you knowledge and how useful that is continues into adulthood. I mean, I always use the example of a friend of mine, Jason, taught me how to notate drums, right? Notate, so like to do the sheet music for drum patterns. So like, you know, piano music, singing music, you can see that. But drums, how the hell do you notate the drums and the kick and the snare and the tom and whatever? And he took 45 minutes on the phone with me and just like, all right, so here's the thing. You separate the hands and the feet, and this is this line, and this line means this. And I have used that every day for the last 10 years since he showed me that.
Let's take a moment just for fun thought example. We obviously want your opinions on the show and whatnot, and always are your corrections, which I know are coming. But what's a piece of information, random or life skill, that you received from somebody? Let us know in the comments. Let's share our gratitude together. That would be a fun, positive thing we could do. Pop them in there.
Yeah. So thank you to Jason DeBoard and Mike's brother.
Yeah.
So anyway, where were we? Oh, okay. So back at Quark's, Quark and Nog are heading off for the wormhole to finish up negotiations with a partner. Nog again asks Quark for the bar, and Quark again shuts it down. Meanwhile, we see Odo trailing Mayherdu. So as Quark arrives at the airlock, Rom
Great
and
gooing.
Crack...
That's a great gooing right there.
Oh, right. That's right. So Quark is able to follow Mayherdu through an airlock by gooing and sneaking in through wormhole. If it's an airlock, there wouldn't be space for gooing. There would not be gooing space. But whatever. It's a cool visual. So as Quark arrives at the airlock, Rom and Krax trap him and plan to literally eject him into space. And just before Rom hits the button cold...
That's such a pro wrestling moment, too. There's a screenshot of it, of right before what they call the hot tag.
The hot tag, that's right.
It's like in pro wrestling, right before the bad guy gets his comeuppance, the good guy's got to tag his partner, and it's like no human beings would ever wait so long to just do this motion. And that's what we got here. You're like, okay, he's really buying time for Odo to come hit him with a steel chair.
That's exactly right. But it's not Odo. It's Zek. Zek shows up. He's alive. He's alive. And he stops them. It turns out all of it was a test to see if Zek's son was ready to take his place, and he failed. So, as it turns out, all
Not
is
that
well.
and I thought it was, and this is a great little twisty twist. He didn't fail because he wasn't cutthroat enough or ruthless enough. It was because he wasn't smart enough to come up with a ruse in order to then get Quark later.
Right, because it all did come back to the value of Quark's bar being right at the mouth of the wormhole. And so Zek wanted his son to take over the bar and slowly undermine Quark's power while letting him be a figurehead, letting Quark be the puppet. So a different layer of treachery. Speaking of treachery, all is well with Quark and Nog. Because Quark is proud of Rom. Quark is proud of Rom for his treachery, for planning to try to kill him.
Which I thought was another great twisty twist.
Oh, it was so it's again, we assume that all these alien species are going to have human-like ethics, and turns out nope, they like the treachery. It's fun. So we finish as Jake and Nog perv on a hot Vulcan. Then Cisco shows up and is proud of him, not for perving, but for helping him learn how to read, and tells them to be friends after all, thus starting a long journey of the friendship of Jake and Nog. And that, folks, is the Nagus. So what do you say? We throw a little quiz at Mike in a segment we like to call. Oh, hold on. Something's wrong with the audio.
Yeah.
It's coming out of the wrong place. I don't know why.
Why don't you just, Keith, I think we're going to have to do it live.
Do it live! Okay, fine. All right, let's, you know what? We'll do the audio in post.
Will we?
I can hear it. It's not being recorded. You're going to have to fix it in post.
Okay. Awesome.
Okay, so your first... He's not going to do that. No. So your first quiz question is, what is the Nagus?
Keith, the Nagus. Have you ever seen The Godfather? Well, instead of kissing the Godfather's ring, you got to kiss the Nagus... the Nagus's naked ass. No, the Nagus's staff with the Ferengi face on it, modeled after Quark's, but I think it's supposed to be just a sort of Ferengi. He's the sort of president, Godfather, lead guy. He's the I think you called him the Trumpian figure in the Ferengi world.
Indeed, you are correct, sir.
Inconceivable.
I can't play the bumper. I can't play the button.
Ding, 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 ding.
Okay, your next vocab quiz is, what are chilled tube grubs?
Well, what are they really? I think they're mealworms, Keith. But in this case, I think they're like a Ferengi delicacy or an appetizer, an hors d'oeuvre, if you will.
Ferengi food. Yes, indeed.
Ding,
Ding, ding, ding,
ding,
ding. And lastly, I gave you 3 this week because you always complain that I gave you 2.
Yeah, right.
Mike, tell us, what are the rules of acquisition?
Keith, if I see it or you lost it and I get it in my possession, it mine.
That is not quite correct.
Oh,
that is a rule of acquisition. But
it is a set of rules. It is a set of rules that guide the ethical principles and the transactional behavior of the Ferengi race.
There you go.
Ping, ding, 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 ding.
Excellently done. All right, now it's time to come along home to the... AlamarEmmys, count to 4. AlamarEmmys, then one more. AlamarEmmys, it's AlamarEmmys time! All right, so for the Nagus, Mike, did you find any wormholes in the plot?
This is going well. Yeah, well, it turns out we just talked it up at the beginning. I found it a little bit inconsistent that they didn't that he was so parched after his masturbatorial fest that he didn't have
okay.
the 7-footer test his poison pills, his Sunny D, to make sure that there wasn't anything in there. But why is this so big?
This episode brought to you by Vitamin C. Are you vitamin C deficient? Come on the Deep Space Nine. We're gonna fill you up with vitamin C.
Anyway, yeah, that's a little thing, but I saw it in there, and I'm trying to think what else. Maybe you'll jog my memory. Go ahead.
Well, I think I mentioned it before. Why there's no substitute teacher beyond O'Brien. He feels like he's busy. Not important. It's structurally you need to involve your cast. I get it. I think that there's always going to be some level of wormhole with the Ferengis because they are always structurally, institutionally, the species, the government, the educational system, that it's it's designed to be funny. It obviously is a commentary on capitalism, sort of taken to the nth degree. But if you really think about any of it too hard, it's really hard for them to have established a successful warp-bearing, existence if they really are following these rules all the way through. But again, it's more for comedy. It's more for fun story. It's not like a logic machine. So it's a wormhole. I just don't care. So what do you say we pick a best moment? Michael.
Sorry, my wife's calling me from the other room, which seems weird.
Oh, fun. We'll take a break.
Yeah, no, it's okay. I think she'll figure it out, or she'll come into the room if it's a problem. Anyway, yes. Sorry. What are we doing?
We had a wormhole in our show.
Yeah.
We're doing the best moment, Mike.
Yes. There's a lot of good moments. Everything with Quark and Nog, I think, are my favorite moments. Because they were we talked about it during the conversation. Jake and Nog, sorry. They were so natural, and I think that as sort of surface as they seem, there's a lot of there's in my opinion the best nuggets of wisdom and humanity are in those bits. The stuff with Quark is great, and I think there are lessons to be mined from that, things to be learned from it. But I thought that the takeaways, the sort of, if you will, the ethical ideas that are meaningful and I think are peppered throughout the episode are best portrayed there and then, and not just about parent and son, but about friendship and about what I'm going to talk about when we get to the rating, breaking cycles, which I will talk about in a moment. So everything with Jake and Nog.
Yeah. Well, I agree with you. I think that's definitely the favorite moments. So I'm going to agree with you there, but I'm going to give a bonus favorite moment to Thirsty Nagus coming out of the Hollow Suite. I didn't even notice it then, but it gave me a chuckle today.
It sure did. It was really funny. Really funny.
It was a really, really good chuckle there. Okay, so now let's get into it. Let's give this episode an amount of self-sealing stem bolts.
So we learned a lot of stuff. I thought the stuff I really liked about the Quark and the Nagus storyline was that, we talk about in our other show a bunch of the twisty twist for twisty twist's sake, right? But here I thought the twisty twists were kind of cool in that we find out that the son was the one setting out to get Quark, right? But he didn't fail this big test because, the testy test made sense, right? It would make sense for the Nagus to want to make sure that the said person was underhanded enough. And just the plot to kill Quark wasn't enough. He wanted him to show more, which I thought that was a twisty twist that made sense.
Do it in a smart way.
And then the second twisty twist, which also made sense, is you think for sure, oh, Quark's been a dick to his brother this whole time. Rom. But so he's going to be double pissed. Like Rom is definitely in for it. But then he's like, no, you're the man. I didn't think you had it in you, but you do. That's great. So yeah, I liked all the Ferengi stuff. But what I really want to focus on is what I thought was the coolest bit about the Jake and Nog relationship here is that, Star Trek often we kind of look at how it's this sort of a beacon of advanced ideas and that we've progressed as a race, as humans, and as a civilization, as a galactic civilization in some ways. But what I thought was interesting about this episode is, I think you mentioned this before, a lot of times on ships, we bring in guests and we respect their cultures. But on the space station, the difference here is that it's a melting pot. It's very much like our country, our planet, where it's a melting pot. It's a conglomeration, and we have to exist together. So there isn't a complete separation of the different cultures, right? And what I think is interesting here is that multiple people that we've come to learn and respect, Ben, Dax,
O'Brien,
and the Ferengis, obviously, who are all very intelligent, all state pretty definitively here, and even Odo, who's continually suspicious, state, look, we've never come up with a way to really trust each other, the Ferengis and the humans. It's just not going to happen. It's just they're conflicting ethical viewpoints, conflicting everything. Yeah. And what kept coming back to me was, once again, sorry to bring it to my family, was this conversation I had with my father, because my dad would get pretty mad at us, but he never hit us. And every once in a while he would say that. He's like, I never laid a finger on you guys. And I remember as a kid saying to him, well, you're not supposed to, right? Like parents, you're not supposed to hit your kids. That's what we learned. And then my dad shared with us, and my grandfather was, sorry to air my laundry on the internet, but my grandfather beat the living crap out of my dad. Like it was bad. It was a bad scenario. And my dad told me, he's like, I recognized that as a kid that I swore that if I ever had kids, I wouldn't lay a finger on them. And as I've become an adult and I've learned about different things, heard about and learned about abuse and different things, it's really hard, not just physical abuse, but alcohol abuse and all kinds of things. It's really hard to break those cycles. And so the person who is responsible for breaking that cycle legitimately alters the course of history in a lot of ways.
For sure.
Breaking that cycle wasn't easy for my dad, and it sort of set up a lot of the ways that we are as human beings. And so Jake and Nog here, as cute and as sort of simple as you can view this plot line, are really breaking a cycle of relationship. And it could hold, it sort of, look, because even in the future of Trek here, there are certain repetitive things that we haven't got, like interspecies relations are still become political or become standstill because of old thoughts and ideas. And Jake and Nog are breaking a cycle here, and that friendship they're establishing is being treated as something new and beautiful. And I think that's awesome. What an advanced idea. And so I really thought it was powerful.
Yeah.
Anyway, that all said, I think it's a really great episode. It's funny. It's heartfelt. I felt that the plot was there aren't great stakes involved, and there's no ticking time as usually there is. And I thought that was a refreshing change of pace and a refreshing change of pattern. I'm going to give it a solid 80 self-sealing stem bolts.
Yeah. No, I agree with you. And I think it's really well put about sort of breaking the cycle and the story that we're telling here of, the people from two different universes, becoming friends in an environment that's not used to. And of course it's sci-fi. So it's all an allegory, right? It's all an allegory of different human communities finding ways to become friends and overcome the cycles, like you said, breaking the cycle and breaking free of family legacy, breaking free of cultural legacy, and rising above it, and having consequences moving forward. And we're going to find out on Deep Space Nine the consequences of this friendship and the consequence that this has, which will be bigger than just Jake and Nog. It'll be bigger than it's going to have reverberations for generations beyond that.
Right.
And that's really, really cool. And that's good storytelling. And that's, it's great. I really liked that. And it was very, because we've talked a lot about how sometimes the sci-fi overrides the character beats, overrides the character development. And this one, there's almost no sci-fi in this at all.
Right.
It's all about character development, about building worlds, right? And we're building the world of the Ferengi, much like which they were established in the Next Generation, but not really that fleshed out. And it's the same thing that where Klingons were in the original series. They didn't really get fleshed out until Next Generation. And so it is the next series fleshing out something established in a really deep and meaningful, and and of course in the Ferengi, it's fun, it's silly, but it is also a pretty savage critique of capitalism, and there's like a lot going on there, which again, sci-fi being allegory. We're not talking about capitalism, we're not talking about trickle-down economics, we're talking about Ferengis, right? Wink, and it's really cool. I really, really like that. So is this like some legendary episode of Deep Space Nine? No, but this is what the show's baseline is going to be, right? It's going to take a couple of seasons before we don't have clunkers anymore. Mm-hmm. Like every episode is going to be rooted in this interesting character stuff and have something to say. So we are just beginning. We are scratching the surface with our friends, the Ferengis here, and this relationship. So really fun. This felt like one of the first proper episodes of Deep Space Nine, where this feel, having the knowledge of all 7 seasons. Right. This was like, oh yeah, no, this feels like the Deep Space Nine, not a show trying to sort itself out, trying to figure out what it is. And which is not to say that we're not going to have clunkers coming up, because we got some woofs coming up, but I really, really did like this episode. So yeah, I think I'm like right there with you. I'm gonna give this. I'm gonna give it an 82 self-sealing stem bolts. All right, so next week we are watching Vortex. So that will be fun. Thank you so much for watching our little show. We will be back next week. We're having a blast doing this. If you would like to join us and become producers on the show, essentially, you can do so at patreon.com/KandM. Get bonus episodes, get AMAs, get all the usual stuff. But really, you become a producer on the show, and we very much appreciate it. If you haven't already, give us a like, give us a subscribe, hit that notification bell. It really helps it. We're trying to build an audience, but we're trying to do it organically. We're not trying to go out and like do all this stuff. So in order for us to grow it organically, it means tell a friend. If you're part of Deep Space Nine stuff, and just post about the show. Let other folks know that we exist if you're enjoying this, and that will make a really big difference to us. So thank you so much for watching. We'll see you back next week. Till then, this has been. Thank you for watching K&M Entertainment. If you enjoyed our particular brand of nonsense, please like and subscribe. Or become one of our patrons at patreon.com/KNM.